Night settled over the fortress like a slow-moving veil, thick and deliberate, as if the darkness itself had chosen to descend with purpose. The fires on the ramparts flickered weakly, their light trembling against the weight of the cold wind. In the quiet corridors, tension shadowed every step. Nothing felt familiar anymore. The walls that once offered protection now echoed with an uncertainty that was difficult to name. Something had shifted. Something invisible. Something dangerous deep inside. The atmosphere carried an unmistakable heaviness, an unspoken message that the fortress was no longer just a structure of stone and mortar. It had begun to listen, to observe, to breathe. Every whisper lingered longer than it should. Every footstep sounded sharper. Every unguarded corner seemed to hide a memory of footsteps that were never accounted for. The men stationed around the courtyard moved with quiet suspicion. Each pair of eyes held its own version of truth, fear, or doubt. They were soldiers trained for battle, but nothing had prepared them for this. An enemy without a visible form. An enemy who left behind no banner, no cry, no trail. Only shadows. Only questions. Somewhere in the far corridor, a door creaked open. A faint beam of lamplight slid across the stone floor, thin and uncertain, as though seeking permission to pass. The figure who emerged walked with a practiced calm, the kind that grows in the heart of someone who understands danger better than safety. The fortress did not threaten him. Fear did not touch him. His allegiance lay beyond the walls. He walked within. He moved with intent. He moved with purpose. He moved with a secret. While the fortress slept in fragments, the command tent remained awake. Maps lay open, their edges held down by knives and stones to prevent the cold wind from turning them. Lines drawn in dark ink pointed to places of conflict and suspicion. Nothing on the maps revealed the one truth that mattered. The enemy was not outside. The enemy was listening to the heartbeat of the fortress from within, inside. The night pressed against the walls, demanding entry. It felt as though the darkness outside sought to merge with the darkness growing inside the fortress itself. A strange symmetry, a matching energy, one feeding the other. The corridors carried a soft echo, the sound of steady breaths, cautious steps, and the distant flutter of fabric brushing against stone. Men on watch would look over their shoulders without knowing why. Their instincts whispered warnings their minds could not yet understand. The fortress had sheltered armies for years, but tonight it guarded something else, a secret war. The wounded soldier who had arrived earlier, with a warning, now lay in a dimly lit chamber. His breath moved shallowly, rising and falling like the last flicker of a dying flame. Whatever he had seen was enough to crush the strength in his body. His arrival had confirmed what many feared but dared not say aloud. The walls harbored betrayal. The silence hid footsteps not meant to be heard. This realization created a weight that the fortress struggled to absorb. Even the air tasted different, colder, sharper, and strangely heavy. Some men described it as a storm gathering in the bones of the building itself. Others felt it like an unseen pair of eyes observing them. Whatever it was, the feeling grew stronger with every passing moment. Outside, the night stretched endlessly over the land. The moon, half hidden behind drifting clouds, cast pale light over the outer walls. Shadows stretched thin across the ground, long and restless, moving with the wind but somehow never losing their shape. Somewhere beyond the walls, a distant owl cried out. Its voice carried a note of warning. Inside, the shadow who had burned the document continued moving. The ember of truth he had destroyed still floated through his memory. The paper had curled under the flame as though it recognized its own importance and fought its destruction. But secrets do not resist for long. Fire gives no second chances. The room where the paper had burned still carried the scent of smoke, faint but persistent. The ash remained scattered across the surface where the flame had devoured it, tiny black remains of knowledge now lost forever. But the shadow did not pause to look back. His work was not done. The night offered him its cover, and he accepted it fully. Elsewhere in the fortress, men whispered quietly, trying to make sense of the shift they felt but could not describe. Some spoke of unfamiliar footsteps. Some noticed doors slightly ajar. Some sensed their weapons had been touched but not moved. Paranoia crawled through the ranks like a slow-moving serpent, but more dangerous than paranoia was silence. Silence demanded interpretation. Silence demanded imagination. Silence demanded fear. As the night deepened, the fortress seemed to breathe heavier. The walls carried a subtle tremor, as though reacting to the tension inside them. The men felt it, but could not identify its source. This was not the tremor of enemy siege engines. This was the tremor of something unseen, something closer than an approaching army. Somewhere in the courtyard, a lantern flickered violently and then went out. A soldier rushed to relight it, but stopped halfway. The wind had not extinguished it. It had simply died. A bad omen, the older soldiers would say. A sign that the night held more within it than shadows. In the command tent, the weight of decisions pressed down like stone on a weary back. Strategy cannot solve what was happening inside the walls. Calculation cannot expose the shadow who had already passed through Forbidden's corridors. This was no longer a battle of swords and shields. It had become a battle of wits, perception, and timing. The fortress, meanwhile, continued to breathe slowly, deeply, almost rhythmically. The men who stood near the walls felt it. The ground beneath their feet felt warmer in some places, colder in others, as if responding to movements that no one could see. Hours passed, but the night refused to loosen its grip. The sky remained dark, the air remained sharp, and the tension remained unbroken. Near dawn, an unusual stillness settled across the fortress. The wind softened. The fire steadied. The shadows stopped moving. It was the kind of stillness that comes only before a revelation, before the moment when truth begins to rise from the ashes of fear. The fortress had learned to breathe through the night. Now it waited for what would come next, for what would be exposed, for what would break, or what would hold. The men within it felt the same anticipation. They stood at the brink of discovery, though none could yet see what awaited them beyond the darkness. But the night had already chosen its path, and the story that began in silence now moved toward something far louder, a clash not of armies, but of intentions, a confrontation not of swords, but of secrets. The fortress was ready. The shadows were ready. And dawn was almost here.